Hello and welcome to episode 19 of the Raising Musos podcast. Today's topic is going to be a bit controversial, but I really do think it's an important topic to talk about, and it's why my school, or basically why makeup lessons are just not beneficial. So why my school, Music Makers Academy, is the school that I run, why my school no longer offers makeup lessons. So I'm going to talk about makeup lessons, and it's a whole topic that often teachers and parents, it can cause a bit of friction and a conflict. So I'm hoping by the end of today's episode, if you're listening and you're a parent and your child's having music lessons, you're going to understand why makeup lessons are not good for you either. So I'm going to convince you, okay? So before I start, my name is Eliza. I don't even know if I said this at the start. I run a music school in Joondalup, which is located in Western Australia. My music school is called Music Makers Academy, and we offer private lessons for a lot of instruments: piano, guitar, harp, violin. We have a flute tutor, and we also just have a vocal coach who's just joined the team recently. So that's all that we do. And I personally have been giving lessons for 10 years? Sounds about right. Yeah, I think about 10 years. I've been teaching harp and piano, so that is quite the achievement. So anyway, makeup lessons. I have to say, when I started teaching piano and harp, so about 10 years ago, I definitely used to do makeup lessons, right? Because I was in this position where I didn't have a full-time job. Actually, I didn't have any job at all at the time. I was still living at my parents' house. Doing the lessons thing was more a side hustle. And I thought eventually I would stop doing it, to be honest, as I would get a normal job. So I didn't really take the teaching thing very seriously. I didn't charge very much. And because I didn't have a lot of students and I didn't have a job, I actually had a lot of time during the week to see students. And so because, I didn't really take the teaching seriously and I had so much time, if a student cancelled, I was like, yeah, just come on this day because I don't really have any students then. So I was a very, very flexible teacher. But then every year, I started getting more and more students, and I started to have less and less free time. And it got to the point where, I think I was basically teaching almost 50 students by myself every week, which is a pretty full schedule. And suddenly, if a student couldn't make their lesson that week, I couldn't even reschedule that lesson for the same week. It would have to be during the school holidays. Or it was just getting really annoying to reschedule the student because of my full schedule. Or I would have to finish work at a later time than normal, because I would have to switch that student just at the end of an already full day of teaching. So that's when doing makeup lessons really started to feel challenging for me. And then eventually I came across professional training, and they convinced me to switch my model so that I no longer do makeup lessons. And I've adopted this last year, and it has made a huge difference to me, to my staff, and I think also to my families. It was just a mindset shift, but actually also a practical shift, as I will explain. But anyway, that's the story about, or the history, I should say, about why my school, we no longer do makeup lessons. Now, before I go on, I do have to say that the idea of, being able to reschedule lessons when your child is sick and all of that stuff, it seems really fair and reasonable. I really do understand that, sometimes life just happens, kids get sick and schedules get busy. Sometimes you just can't make it to a lesson. And it really sucks when that happens. Because often parents will just think of a missed lesson as, they've lost value, they've paid for it, and they're not getting the full value of what they've paid. And so often when a kid can't attend their lesson, the parent will feel like they've paid for something and they haven't received anything in return, which I understand completely. But the reality is a little bit more nuanced than just, hey, I paid for this and I didn't get the lesson that I paid for. It's a little bit more nuanced than this. Because rescheduling lessons is not always practical, first of all, and it's also not beneficial for the teacher and even for you as the student. So let me tell you why. So makeup lessons, first of all, they disrupt the consistency and the learning process. So learning an instrument is something that needs to be structured and it needs to be consistent. So we want the practice, for example, we want the practice to be regular, to happen 5 days a week, maybe you even know what days you practice on, you know what amount of time you practice, But we also want the lessons to be consistent too, because it creates an expectation and it creates something that you can work towards. You're working towards your lesson. And so if lessons are always changing, the schedule changes all the time, you're having makeup lessons like every couple of weeks because of sports commitments, then you're not going to have the same anticipation and the same routine as you would if your lessons were never made up. Okay? So inconsistent lessons or an inconsistent lesson schedule will impact the consistency and regularity of your practice. So it just becomes very disruptive. And a makeup lesson, it doesn't undo the lost time. It actually squeezes an extra lesson into a schedule. And so sometimes the makeup lesson feels rushed, it feels unfocused, because we're just trying to fit this extra time into an already packed schedule. So that's the first reason why makeup lessons are not beneficial to you. It just becomes really, it messes up your child's routine. And that's not good, because learning music just relies so much on that clear, regular routine and structure. So secondly, makeup lessons are logistically challenging, and it often adds extra admin time that the teacher could really do without. music teachers run full schedules. You don't want to know my schedule. Like tomorrow, I'm teaching for 6 hours back to back with a 20-minute break. That's my schedule for Tuesday. I wouldn't want to have to do a makeup lesson at the end of my 6 hours of teaching. Thank you very much. Every day, even on weekends, I have students. And I have so little free time that the time that I have that is free and, no student, no teaching, I really want to keep that time free for myself. And so when, you have teachers and the schedule is really already really busy, it's just going to be practically challenging to find that free time for a makeup lesson. And so then if your studio or if your teacher still allows makeup lessons, then it can become a bit of an unfair thing between students, because say you've got like student A needs a lesson rescheduled and so does student B, and the teacher has found a makeup lesson option for student A but not for student B, so student B is not going to get a makeup lesson but student A is, then it's really unfair. So the best way to keep it fair for everyone, including the teacher, so like keep the teacher's schedule really fair, is simply to just not do makeup lessons. It's just, I cannot tell you, and then, when you try to reschedule a makeup lesson, you're like, will this day suit you? And then you have to wait for the parent, and then they're like, oh, well, no, we can't do that time. And everyone has such limited time that sometimes even actually just finding a regular lesson time for a student can be really difficult. Families are so busy these days. Sometimes they only have like one available time for the entire week for a lesson. And so, we can't expect the tutors to be so flexible to accommodate for everybody's needs, because sadly, we have our own needs. So it's just so difficult to find time sometimes for a makeup lesson. That is just easier if we just don't do makeup lessons. So yeah, obviously coordinating and finding a time that's suitable for a makeup lesson, both for the parent and the teacher, is really challenging. It's stressful and it adds extra admin work that the teacher has to do that you're not paying for. So now the teacher has to do extra work that you're not paying for. And so, as I said, makeup lessons create an unfair workload for teachers. So unlike other service industries where you can just rebook a missed appointment, when you have a private music teacher, they actually set aside that time for you, not for anybody else. And so if a student can't attend that lesson, nobody's going to come during that time that you were supposed to come, because we've booked that time for you. And so when you cancel a lesson, the teacher, we lose that time, but we also can't give it to anybody else. But we still have to be there, especially if it's a last minute cancellation. We'll still be at the place to teach you. We'll still have everything prepared for you. We'll have done the work for you, and we'll be available for you. And then you're just not there. And so expecting us to teach extra hours for makeups means they end up working more for the same amount of money. I don't know if that makes sense. But let me give you an example. I used to teach some siblings on Saturdays, but they did a lot of tennis. And so, I went to my studio on Saturday and I would teach them for an hour. And then, they had to cancel because they had a tennis tournament on. And I'm like, well, just come on Sunday. And so suddenly on Sunday, I have 1 hour of work that I was not supposed to work. And so on the Saturday, you might think, well, on Saturday, you don't have your students on Saturdays, but I'm still thinking about it. Maybe I even attended, I came with my notes prepared. And then I just end up having this extra hour on my Sunday, which is supposed to be my free day, because of a cancellation. And so imagine, I used to maybe get 3 cancellations a week. So 3 makeup lessons I would have to do. And often they would be on weekends. So that's my weekend gone. So I'm just working more for the same income. And I watched a video about this on YouTube, but imagine you are a boss, right? And some clients have cancelled their appointments, and you have to tell your staff who's arrived to work today for their shift, normal regular shift, and then you just tell them, sorry, I don't have work for you today, but can you stay 2 more hours tomorrow, please? That's basically what you are asking your tutor to do when you ask for makeups. So that's my case. Hopefully you can understand the point of view of a teacher and of a boss. Why makeup lessons are just not beneficial for us. And when we end up working more hours than we've agreed to, we become resentful, we have less time for ourselves, so we become more tired and burnt out. And the 4th reason why makeups are just not good is that they don't encourage commitment. And that's probably one of the biggest mindset shifts I have seen in my own students when I did implement the change that I would no longer do makeup lessons, is they no longer had excuses for not turning up to lessons. If they go away on holidays during school term, too bad, that's on them. They've made that choice. I still want to get paid because I'm still available for work, and that's still their normal lesson spot. They will find ways to attend the lesson and to reprioritize their commitments so that they can attend the lessons in person. I have very few cancellations now. People actually turn up, and because they know that I respect my own time and I respect the time of my staff. I have to be on the side of my staff if I want them to keep working for me. So now when people know that I don't do makeups, they are just so much more committed to the lesson, which is such a positive thing, because we do need families and students to be committed to learning an instrument. So students who treat their lesson time as a fixed, non-negotiable commitment are going to progress much more than students who think they can just come whenever they feel like it, and that they can cancel anytime they feel like it to see friends or to go on holidays or whatever. So it's a good thing. If your music school or your teacher doesn't do makeup lessons, see it as a positive thing. And try to have the mindset that yes, you do have to be committed to music. Now, just because I don't offer makeup lessons doesn't mean if a parent has paid for a lesson, they don't get anything. No, of course not. What we actually do here is when a student can't attend their lesson, we film a video for them. A video, of course, that is specific to what they're learning. So, for instance, if one of my students is away, I obviously check what we were working on in the previous lesson, And I usually just give them 3 new things to work on. And in the video, I will demonstrate those things and tell them how to practice it. So basically they get an online lesson, and sure, it will be a shorter lesson, maybe a 10-minute video, but that is still value that the student is getting. And they can actually also watch it multiple times throughout the week until the next lesson. So in a way, it actually provides even more value than an in-person lesson, because they can just watch it all the time or however many times that they need. And so we also invite students to send through videos before the normal lesson time so that the teacher can watch, can listen, and have something to provide feedback on. So that's what we do here at Music Makers Academy. We don't do any makeup lessons. If a student is away, they just get a video lesson. And as I said, it's still incredibly beneficial for students. Now, if instead of makeup lessons and instead of video lessons, other things you can do if there is a lesson that your child cannot attend, of course, is make sure you keep your child engaged with their music learning at home. And you can do this by reviewing previous lesson notes with your child. They might have to watch some content online, as I said, like a video lesson, and just get them to practice maybe slightly older repertoire or older content, previously learned songs. So just because they've missed a lesson doesn't mean they suddenly don't get to practice or they don't get to learn. They might just have to learn in a different way. Okay, so that's it for this episode. I hope it made sense. It's hard to record an episode because you're just rambling on and on by yourself. But basically, let me just conclude by saying, I still get, even though it's written in my policies and parents sign the policies when they sign up, I still get the odd like, hey, can my lesson be rescheduled? And as I said, I do understand why parents request makeup lessons. But I also hope that after listening to today's episode, you have a bit more nuanced thinking about this issue. And hopefully I've convinced you that makeup lessons are just not the best solution. Actually, let me know in the comments on YouTube. So you can send me an email at hello@musicmakersacademy.com.au. Have I convinced you that makeup lessons are not the solution? Let me know. I want to hear, or do I need to make another episode where maybe I talk a bit more angrily, no, kidding, about why makeup lessons are just not working. The key to progress in music isn't squeezing in extra lessons. It's about being committed and having a consistent lesson routine and also practice routine. And when we allow makeup lessons, that kind of mindset of commitment and the practicality of having a committed and regular routine goes out the window. So instead of focusing on, makeup lessons and things like that, focus on how to make the most of the lessons your child does attend. And that will make a much bigger difference in their musical journey. So, what are your thoughts on makeup lessons? I would love to hear from you. As I said, tell me if I've convinced you about having no makeup lessons. You can send me a message on Instagram. My handle is @musicmakersacademy, Otherwise, you can send me an email, hello@musicmakersacademy.com.au, or you can leave a comment on YouTube. Cool. So that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you next time on the Raising Musos podcast. Goodbye.